Dose 2, it went from 47% up to almost 60%. Whereas in the placebo group for dose 2, it's about 22.8%. So this tells me that if I experience fatigue after dose 2, it's probably because of the vaccine and not because of some sort of external environmental factor. Next, we'll look at headache. After dose 2 of the vaccine, you had about a 50% chance of experiencing a headache of any kind. And for the placebo, it's about a quarter of the people, about 24 or 25%. For chills, we've got 35.1% after dose 2, so greater than a third. But for the placebo, only about 3.8% of people experience chills on any given week. When we look at vomiting, 1.9% after dose 2 experience some kind of vomiting. So it's not a very likely chance that you'll experience vomiting of any kind. But with the dose 2 of the placebo, we had 1.2% who experienced vomiting. This tells me that if you experience vomiting after dose 2 of the vaccine, it's probably not because of the vaccine. Because in a population of about 2,000 people, between 1% and 2% of them you can expect will experience some sort of vomiting. Yes, 1.9 is technically greater than 1.2, but I would not say that that is a statistically significant difference when you're looking at these sizes of populations. Me personally, when I read this, I said, okay, this is pretty close to what you would expect in a population, even if they didn't get the vaccine. This is probably not because of the vaccine. Then you look at diarrhea. You'll notice that these numbers are all pretty close to each other. There's a little bit more of a difference between these two, but not very much. The way that I interpret this so this is dose 1, this column's dose 1 of vaccine, dose 1 of placebo, dose 2 of vaccine, dose 2 of placebo. So dose 1 of vaccine, about 11% of them experienced some kind of diarrhea. Dose 1 of placebo experienced more diarrhea than dose 1 did. This tells me that if I were to experience diarrhea after getting the vaccine, I have the same chance of experiencing that diarrhea during that week as I did even if I didn't get the vaccine. Next, we have new or worsened muscle pain. This one, there's a significant difference. We've got 21%, so about a fifth of people experience some kind of muscle pain after dose 1 of vaccine. But in the general population, you can expect only about 10% of people to experience some kind of muscle pain, maybe because they were doing a workout or something like that. They might be experiencing delayed onset muscle soreness, for example. After dose 2 of the vaccine, it's about 37.3% who experience muscle pain or soreness. This tells me that after dose 2 of vaccine, I am more likely than dose 1 of vaccine to experience some kind of muscle pain. And further, in the general population, about 10% of them for any given week will experience some sort of muscle pain. We can expect 10% of people to experience muscle soreness in any given week, but in the people who actually got the vaccine, we can expect 37% of them to experience some kind of muscle soreness. Lastly, new or worsened joint pain. You have about 11% who experience some sort of joint pain after they received the vaccine versus 6%. It's kind of a gray area. I would say here, maybe it's because of the vaccine, maybe not. It's probably because of the vaccine. But then the difference here is a little bit more stark, right? So 6% and 5.2%, okay, we can expect about 5 to 6% of people over the course of a week are going to experience some sort of joint pain. But in the vaccine group for dose 2, about a fifth of them experience some type of new or worsened joint pain. This tells me if you experience this symptom, it's probably because of what's in the vaccine and not because that's just what's expected in the population. So one last thing before we wrap up the safety portion, I want to talk a little bit about allergies. Allergic reactions, they are rare, but they're not impossible. It's a risk with any vaccine, anything that you're getting injected with, there is a possibility that you could have an allergic reaction to it. The severity of the allergic reaction depends on the individual. The chance of an allergic reaction also depends on the individual. If you experienced a vaccine reaction to the anthrax shot, there is a possibility that you could experience an allergic reaction to the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. They looked at the ingredients of the anthrax vaccine and they compared it to some of the ingredients in this Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, and there was either a similar ingredient or the same ingredient in both of these vaccines. If you have ever had an allergic reaction of any kind, make sure that when you go to get this vaccine, you notify the medical staff on site that you have had an allergy. You'll also have to fill out a form that says that you have had an allergic reaction to something, and it will ask what that something was. So you will have to put down that you have had an allergic reaction before, and then make sure that the people there have not only the knowledge of how to treat allergic reactions, but also have the equipment on site to treat an allergic reaction should it occur. Again, allergic reactions are extremely rare. During the week of December 14th to the 23rd, there were 21 cases of anaphylaxis in the first approximately 2 million doses of the first dose of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. What this means is that you have about a 1 in 90,000 chance of experiencing anaphylaxis. So very small chance of this happening. For the people who experienced an allergic reaction, 71% of them occurred within that first 15 minutes of vaccination. That's why when you get the vaccine, they're going to go tell you to sit down and wait for 15 minutes. If you want to feel more comfortable, then you can wait 30 minutes. Now we're going to talk about the efficacy of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines. We have to talk about how many people actually completed this trial. There were just shy of 1,900 people who were slated to receive 2 doses of vaccine, and just shy of 19,000 people who were slated to receive 2 doses of placebo. So we had over 37,000 people who were initially signed up to be vaccinated with either vaccine or placebo. The number of people who actually completed both doses of vaccine or both doses of placebo were 98.2% for the vaccine and 98.1% for the placebo. There's a couple of reasons why people don't finish vaccine trials. Some of them withdraw from the study, and when they withdraw, could be because they might have experienced an adverse event. That's what happened here. There was an adverse event that for 8 people who were in the vaccine group said was too much for them and they didn't want to continue with the drug trial. Then in the placebo group, you have 5 people. So statistically, these 2 numbers are identical. Further, you have 2 people who were slated to receive 2 doses of vaccine who died during the trial. You have 4 people who were slated to receive 2 doses of placebo who died. Now, if I were a sneaky statistician and I wanted to scare people, I could say this placebo is killing people. It killed twice as many people as the vaccine did. But the reality of the situation is rather that we can expect in a population of roughly almost 19,000 people that we're watching over the course of several months, we can expect that approximately 4 of them are going to die, maybe from car accidents, maybe from falling and slipping on some ice, maybe from a heart attack. There are a lot of ways that people can die. It is expected that a couple of people will pass away during the trial just because there are a lot of ways that people can die in real life. The fact that we had 2 people in the treatment group who passed away, statistically, these numbers are identical. Whether you got the vaccine or you got the placebo, you had about the same chance of passing away during the time that this vaccine trial was occurring, which was a couple of months. So what we're very interested in is this cumulative incidence curves for first COVID-19 occurrence after dose 1. What this graph is showing is new cases of COVID with respect to time. That's an oversimplified way of explaining this. So essentially what this means is that as time goes on, if these curves are going upwards, that means that there's more cases of COVID in that population. So the red line or the red dots, those represent the people who received the placebo, and the blue dots, those are the ones who received the actual vaccine. So at day 0, they get dose 1, and then at day 21, they get dose 2. Now, what's interesting is that at about day 14, you'll notice that there's a split in the populations, right? If you couldn't see the whole rest of this graph, if you could only see up to here, you could say that maybe the split in the data isn't actually because of any real effect. Maybe it's just some randomization in the data. But you'll notice that from day 0 right up until about day 14, both the vaccine population, and both the vaccine sample and the placebo sample of people are catching COVID, catching the disease at about the same rate. So as time goes on, they're both catching COVID at about the same linear rate. But then at day 14, there's that split. So that split, as you'll start to notice, becomes more apparent when we get to day 21, which is when they received their second dose of either placebo or vaccine. And the split is especially apparent that it is actually truly something significant, a true trend, once we get to day 28, which is 7 days after they received their second dose of vaccine. So as time goes on, and this is, the number of days, this goes out to day 119. As time goes on, the people who received the vaccine, they do not continue to catch COVID at the same rate. The way that we figure out how effective a vaccine is we split the population into a placebo group and a treatment group. And then we look at the number of COVID cases in the placebo group and we compare it to the number of COVID cases in the treatment group. In the placebo group, people continued to catch COVID, but in the treatment group, people were not catching COVID like they were if they didn't get the vaccine. This tells us that this vaccine is effective. So how effective is it? 7 days after dose 2, it was 95% effective. Then what they wanted to know is how